Hello, everyone. It is Tuesday where we have different practitioners and random people we've met in the community on the show. Today we have a very special guest, Kai Bertrand, who I met at a MeWe fair, which is kind of like a metaphysical wellness fair. And Kai was actually running the panels in the morning. So there was a panel of psychics, and Kai was actually doing all the kind of facilitating of that. So Kai must be a bigwig among the MeWe fair people. So Kai, first of all, where are you located?
I actually am in Tacoma, Washington.
Okay, Tacoma. And you're a Kahuna.
Correct.
Okay, so
That
go ahead.
okay. So yeah, Kahuna is it's the Hawaiian version of a shaman, is what it is.
Okay, interesting. So how long have you been doing that?
Forever. It's
Wow.
kind of like one of those things that you're kind of born into, sort of, in a way.
Okay.
Because I've had abilities and talents from, according to my mother since I was an infant. So it's kind of been my thing forever.
Huh. So when you were a little kid, you were like seeing spirits and stuff?
Yeah, seeing spirits and other things that I didn't have names for at the time. One of the stories that I like to tell about my mom is that, you know how sometimes when you meet people and you're like, they seem nice, but there's something that's not quite right about them. And what she would do when I was just a baby is she would get me close to that person, and if I screamed my head off, she knew something was wrong with them. And if I was okay with them, then she was like, yeah, they're fine. And she told me this like many, many years later. And I was like, really, mom? Like, I was a baby. And she was like, you were never wrong. She's like, eventually we figured it out. You were never wrong. So why not? I'm like, okay. Yeah, my mom was very practical that way.
Interesting. Do you think you're sensitive to energies?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So your
Yeah.
aura is just kind of sensitive to people's auras.
Yeah. Well, and I can see different things. And, so for instance, if someone has like something attached to them, like an entity or some sort of negative energy or even a ghost or something like that, I can actually see that.
Interesting. So
Wait, I have a question. What are you feeling right now? If you had to give us three words, like,
Well, I think I'm feeling like this sense of well, actually I'm feeling like excitement, like oh my God, that's really cool kind of stuff. And I'm actually feeling um that like the sense like this is going to be interesting. As far as like what I read off of each of you, I actually don't do that as a general rule unless somebody asks, because to me that's kind of like an invasion of privacy. So unless somebody walks up to me and says, "Hey, do I have something attached to me?" I don't actually answer that. So,
yeah, that was a good question though. So it's now I have to ask, what in your astrological chart makes you a shaman? Do you know your chart at all?
I don't. I'm really terrible at it astrologically. But yeah, I know like from someone who actually knows how to read charts. She showed me a thing where she said most of my planets are like up top in the houses up top, and that I have very few planets on the bottom. I don't know what that means astrologically. You would probably know better than I would. But I have my sun is in Mars, my
Okay.
moon is in Libra, and I'm a Gemini rising.
Memorizing. Do you know what your sun sign is?
I'm an Aries.
Okay, so Mars is sign. Okay, so you're an Aries, Libra with a Gemini rising. Okay, interesting. Okay. Um, I'm a Gemini rising, just so you know, with a lot of Libra. So we can get along in that way. Okay, well, cool. It's like as an astrologer, I always get really curious because usually shamans show up in the chart as having extremely psychically sensitive charts, or they have charts where there's like a lot of eighth house stuff, which is like death and rebirth or entities or things like that. So it's like there's probably markers in your chart that make you a shaman. Not that we have to know those for the show today, but it is something kind of curious to look at. So Jay-Z, of course, chime in if you want to talk, you know. But so I guess tell us, Kai, what is a shaman? Okay, well, when does a person need a shamanic reading or a shamanic healing, I guess? What is there a reading? Is it a healing? What is it?
Well, I mean, I do both readings and healings, and my readings actually encompass a lot of different things. So, for instance, if someone comes to me and they say, I keep having problems with like money or relationships, those are like the two most common questions I get asked. And then what I might do is just look at their energy and see if there's anything that could be affecting that in terms of, is there any energy cords attached? Is there any like leftover ancestral energy that I need to look at? Is there possibly like some sort of soul contract that's in the Akashic records that we need to burn for them? So there's, or could it just be like an energy block in their body that we need to figure out? So there's lots of different things that I could look at, looking for the anchor points, because I call them energy anchors of whatever that issue is.
Wait, how do you tell if there's a soul contract in the Akashic record?
Because I can, that's one of the things that I can access with my abilities is I can actually go to the Akashic library and I work with like a higher being, which I refer to as a librarian, and I just
Uh-huh.
ask them. I'm just like, okay, show me whatever this person has related to this issue, and they'll pull up the contracts for me.
Oh, whoa, that's really cool. What's your kind of process or environment? Like, how do you get yourself into that space? Because it doesn't seem like you can live in this world and be in that space all the time, right? So, do you have kind of a ritual to get yourself there, or
I
how do
don't be
you?
See, because like I said, this is my life. It's
Hmm.
Tuesday for me, right? Like I can jump in, and I mean, I did it an hour ago. I can jump into the Akashic library, grab some stuff, do some things, look at somebody's past life, close doors on past lives, cut cords. I can do all that. It's just, I don't have, I know a lot of people, shamans especially, have like these processes to do things, right? Kind of gear themselves up and kind of put their head in the space kind of thing. I actually don't need that, but that's
Hmm.
me, right? I don't have to, my intention is so strong at this point. I've developed it to the point where if I decide that I'm going to do this, then I do that. And that's how it works. So one of the things that most people realize about working with me is that things happen pretty quick. Like if I do some sort of energy work on them, they actually feel it before they get up and walk away. So yeah, I don't really need a whole lot of preparation. I mean, sometimes what I'll do is I'll kind of think about, if something's really complicated, I'll kind of like see what I can get peripherally about the situation before I actually dive in. But for the most part, I don't prepare. I just go for it.
Okay, that was a really good question. So I have to say something. No, I'm pro psychicism. Like I worked as a psychic for a long time and like I get psychics and like I all that. So I'm not asking this as like a to be contrarian. I'm just speaking. Okay. So it's like I'm curious if you think that the work you do with the Akashic records and psychic chords and all that kind of stuff is more philosophical. Like by telling somebody that you're changing their Akashic record, it kind of frees them up from this feeling of being stuck in a certain psychic pattern, or you know what I mean? Or like they keep getting the same bad relationship. You're like, I changed your Akashic record. And so do you think it's the philosophy that you're giving them that helps them? Or do you actually think that you're going to the Akashic record and you're changing the blueprint? Like, is it a place?
I think it's both, honestly, because I mean, people have said to me like, I've worked on this, and I feel like I've done the work, but I still can't get it together. I still can't manage it. And then when I go to the Akashic Records, I'm like, oh yeah, because there's a document here that needs to be burned. And then I burn the document, and they come back like weeks later and go, that freaking changed my life.
Interesting.
So
Yeah,
I
it's
think it's
like
a little of both, actually.
yeah, because in manifestation theory, it's like so much of what we do or how we live is our visions, right? Like, so I feel like you change their vision center there by saying, whatever this contract you're in, I'm burning it now. like I'm getting rid of it. It's like it changes their vision so they can have a new vision moving forward. And I feel like in that way, it is absolutely magical and is absolutely healing the issue. Even if it's just the vision of what you're doing, but it could be that there is actually the Akasha is a real place. I guess this is kind of a similar idea. Is God a concept in language, or is God a person sitting on a cloud? You know what I mean? It's a similar kind of, we'll never know really, right?
Yeah, but a lot of it is perception based too, because I mean, for some people, like the Akashic Library is like a physical place that you can walk into. And for me, like I treat it that way. And so that's why it works that way. But for some people, it's like this ethereal thing, amorphous that I can't do anything with. And the same thing with God. Like for some people, God is like solid. For other people, it's more like a concept, right? It just depends on what your perception can handle and what you can hold, so to speak, energetically speaking. Um, so yeah, it's for me, it's almost like six in one hand, half a dozen in the other. It's like this is how I see it, this is how I perceive it, but how that person actually takes it in, processes it, and then moves forward with their life, they can call it anything they want.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because I feel like we do similar things in as much as astrologers are looking at a karmic blueprint as well. And like an Akasha reader is looking at a karmic blueprint also. It's like, like maybe the chart, the astrological chart wires your soul senses machine to have a certain karma. They say it's like, the sun and moon wire our right and left eyes and they wire us to a certain thing. And it's like the Akasha, let's talk about the Akasha for a second. So now are these agreements that we make on the other side before we come in?
Yeah, they are, things like, I mean, they can be simple things like who's going to be my family? Where am I going to live? What time period am I going to be in? What general things am I going to experience? Like, what are the experiences that I want to have once I incarnate? And sometimes we carry agreements from previous lifetimes. So, stuff like family, like ancestral burdens kind of stuff that we carry with us into, our current incarnation that we have no idea we have, which is why some people are like, why am I always like the person in the family that everybody comes to for all their stuff? Like, how did I get to be that person? Because there's an agreement that you said when you came into this life that you would help your family handle their stuff. And sometimes it's current life stuff, sometimes it's past life stuff. So it varies. Like the Akashic Records holds lots of different agreements on lots of different things. Sometimes it's just a matter of you having an agreement with another soul that says, hey, we're going to meet each other in this lifetime and we're going to be a catalyst for us to have our experiences. Or we're going to be best friends or something like that. I mean, they could be all kinds of things.
Interesting. So, JC, how much does that harken to the astrological chart? Sorry, we are an astrology school, so you're going to hear a
That's
lot of
okay.
astrology in this episode, but we're like weaving it together. So, JC, how much do you think that mimics the chart, and how much is that different?
Well, I'm, it's hard to answer that question because I have another overwhelming question in my mind.
Okay, ask your question.
Because it's getting to fate and free will, right? So if something is in the Akashic record, does that mean it's fated? And if you change the Akashic record, does that mean that there is free will?
I look at it as like when you created the contract, that you chose to do that. That was free will. And now that you are incarnated, and if you want to change it, you're exerting free will again. I don't really believe that anything is fated per se. I think we have a choice as to, we might set up our experiences like, oh, it's kind of like having a list. Like, okay, I want to do this, and this. Whether we actually do them or not, we'll see. So I don't look at anything as being like you must do this or that must happen or whatever. I don't see that.
Right. Okay. So, Andy, to answer your question, because this is about the whole thing that we talk about with astrology as well. And I do see the similarities in your chart. And I see it's like when we have these conversations of, are you predestined for something or are you predisposed for it? Right. So it's kind of seems similar, right? If the Akashic record and your chart, they're both showing what you're predisposed for, but not necessarily predestined. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I feel like it's like if you let all like karmic wheels keep spinning without intervening, your akasha would come to life. Like like if you didn't intervene, right? That there's a fate to the akasha, right? It's like a blueprint that it's like, but that's what's going to get built. But if you intervene and you say, no, I don't like this part of the blueprint, I'm going to intervene in this way. Like I feel like you can interrupt the fate of the akasha, or you can interrupt the fate of your chart by doing astrological remediation, right? But if you let it just, if you faded it out, your akasha would come true, your chart would come true.
Yeah, I mean that's just like when someone does like a regular psychic reading, right? It's like you lay out the cards or you say whatever you're gonna say, and people are like, "Oh my gosh, like this is how it's gonna be forever." I'm like, "No, this is what the energy is right at this moment. Whatever choices you make going forward can change everything."
Okay. Interesting. Now, can you feel chakras?
Yes.
Okay. So when somebody comes in, when you say a reading, because you say one of the things you said is you felt if there's something kind of in their aura or like energetic cords attached. So you can feel psychic cords.
Uh-huh.
Oh my God. Because one of the things we need, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show was so we work with a lot of people in astrological transits. Now, do you know what a transit is?
Have no idea.
Okay. It's okay, you got your blueprint of your chart, which is kind of like you could set up some fates from your chart. And then the 10 planets keep ticking along. So it's like a clock with 10 hands going around your chart. And so the transits is what they're called, is when a ticking hand hits part of your natal chart, which is like your blueprint gets ignited, basically,
Okay.
and something occurs. So people go through these sometimes really challenging transits. So like a Pluto transit, where for a few years they'll have like death and rebirth themes, or like they'll be psychically attached to somebody at a really deep level, or they send out a bunch of psychic cords and they like attach to an alcohol, or they do something kind of obsessive. And it's like I think we have very few remedies for with people when they're in their Pluto transits, or in transits that are kind of transformational, super deep, obsessive. So do you think we could send people to you, for example, to clear cords on these transits where they're getting into mucky muck kind of like, do you clear cords for people like breaking up with people and things like that?
Oh yeah, for sure. Because I mean, what happens is when we connect to another person, especially like on an intimate level, then yeah, there is a cord there and it gets, and even if you break up, that doesn't necessarily mean the cord has been cut, because if that other person is, for instance, a narcissist or something, then they can still take your energy. And every time you think about that person, more energy shoots down the cord to that person. So yeah, when you want to break up with somebody or you want to stop a habit or whatever, then the likelihood is that either there is an actual energy cord or there might be an Akashic record that you've agreed to this experience and you're like, okay, now that I've had the experience, I would like to stop now. Then we can get rid of the contract if that's what the case may, whatever the case is. I don't when someone comes up to me, like I don't assume it's this or that. I just look at their energy and just see what I see, and then go from there. But if somebody is going through like this like major alcoholism or something, or they're becoming addicted to something or whatever, and they were like it's related to what's happening in their chart, then I'm like, okay, let's look at it. Let's see if there's a cord. Maybe it's some sort of ancestral thing that's happening. It could be some sort of past life thing that's happening. It could be any one of those things that's showing up in the chart that way, and then we just figure out where the anchor is and get rid of it.
Okay, I have a
So,
story about, oh, go ahead.
oh, Oh, well, I was gonna ask, so like what is your process? Like say lead us kind of through it. You sit down with the person and then what? Like
Well, then I'll say, okay, so what can I help you with today? And
hmm
then they'll say, yeah, so for instance, I have this boyfriend, and we broke up, and I just keep thinking about him, and I can't, it seems like, his energy is like still affecting me, and I feel like he's sending me bad energy, and I just can't get away from him, kind of stuff. So then what I would do is I would first of all ask the person's permission if I could just check out their energy, and if she says yes, then I look for cords. Okay, do I see a cord between him and her? Okay, yes. Then I cut the cord, and depending on what happens, because what usually or sometimes what can happen is I cut the cord, and the person who wants to the energy of the other person still wants to be attached, so they'll send another cord. So what I will do then is I will actually put up a shield in between the two people so that a cord cannot be reattached. And then what I will do is I will like take out the remnants of the cord, because the cord is kind of like, it's like it has a root system that digs into the energy. So even if you cut the cord, you have to take the root out. And then what I do is I'll energetically repair the hole so that it's like completely whole. And then what I do then is I work with a person and remind them that part of the reason why they keep attracting people, the same types of people, is because their energy system is broadcasting something that attracts them. And sometimes it's like a single thread of energy, like a fishing line kind of deal, that hooks them and brings them back in. So I always tell people, like, this is the point now that I have kind of given you an energetic clean slate to work with, for you to take that time and work on yourself so that you can change your energy and attract someone who you would rather be with instead of repeating the pattern over again. Okay. So that's kind of the standard.
Well, this is super important work. I mean, I have a story about this, for anyone listening, you're like, why would you go to a shaman? Okay, so I had this girlfriend in my 20s, and we were dating for like 3 years, and like we were just super close, super obsessed with each other, writing letters back and forth, all this kind of stuff. But we were like polyamorous and all this stuff, and it got to the point where it was a little toxic and we needed to break up or whatever. But we broke up. I could not stop thinking about her. I mean, like to the point where it was like obsession. I mean, like I felt like half my body had been ripped off. Like I just couldn't get over her. And someone said to me, "Well, have you had your psychic cords cleared?" And I was like, "No, I never have done." So I got my psychic cords cleared from a shaman, and I never thought I stopped thinking about her like immediately. And it was like I was pathologically attached in a toxic fashion, and then went into, like you're saying, a clean slate moment where I could move forward with my life. And that was one of the most biggest learning experiences of like why we need shamans, is like there are certain things that we energetically cannot get over on our own. So I want to ask you the question about this. Do you do soul retrievals?
I have, yes.
So what
I
is it?
don't I don't normally do them in, like, if I'm like doing like some psychic fair or something, I normally don't do it there. But in a private session, I have done that. And I've actually like journeyed with people to go get their own soul pieces if they want to. Because some people are like, I just want your help to do it. And so then I go with them to journey and find their little missing pieces of themselves. But yeah, I have done soul retrievals. I don't do them very often, but yeah, I do.
So that's
How,
done with,
wait, how would I don't, this soul retrieval thing is new to me. Please explain someone. It's
okay,
like
like
you've
what is it
lost little
exactly?
pieces of your soul or
Yeah.
something? How?
So what happens is, so if you were looking at the timeline of your life, okay? So there are certain things that happen that are traumatic to us. And what happens is in order for us to move on, there's like a little piece of our soul that kind of breaks off during that time period, and we leave it behind, and then we move forward. And so a lot of times it's not until people hit like their 40s or 50s that they feel lost, they feel disjointed. And it's because like all the little traumas that they've had throughout their lives where they've literally just broken off a piece of themselves and left it behind, and now they feel like they feel incomplete. And so what we then do is kind of like, you know, different shamans have different methods of doing this, but basically what I do is like kind of like roll back to the timeline to the very first incident. I ask my guides to show me where the first incident is, and then I like walk the person back to the very first incident and then pick up everything as we go. There are other times where the pieces of them are not necessarily in the timeline. Like something was so traumatic that they literally like threw a piece of themselves into another dimension to forget about it. And then we actually have to do a different type of journey to go get it. So that's really what that amounts to. That's how I see it.
Also, tell us about your spirit guides. Like, who are they and what? Yeah.
Well, I have a team. So I have one who has been with me since day one, and he's basically said to me that I will be there until the day you die. And I have other team members that kind of come and go for different reasons, as does everybody. Like, it's one of those things where people don't realize that they have their main spirit guides. Like I just have like one main guide, but I've got like other people who come and go for different reasons. And we will have guides that come in to help us with particular things. So for instance, I had this one woman who was, when I talked to her, you know, I was saying actually in her case, it was an ancestor that came from the past to help her with her business. And she kind of stared at me when I told her that. I said, yeah, he's here to kind of help you with whatever you got going on in your business. I guess there's some problem that you're having. And she said, she goes, I'm struggling to decide whether or not I should sell my business. And of course, I didn't know that. And so she was like, okay. So that's what happens. It's like depending on whatever's happening. Like I told this one woman, yeah, it's like your ancestor's telling me that he's here to help you move. And she's like, no one knows that I'm going to move. I was like, okay.
Wow.
So sometimes they come for really complicated things, like to help you with your relationships. And sometimes they come for just some simple things, just like support. You know, a lot of times we'll have like grandmothers step forward and just like, I ask them to step closer to that person so the person can actually feel the grandmother's energy so that that person gets that sense of like familial love kind of thing. Um, so it varies.
Wow. So, can you see your spirit guides, or you mainly hear them, or?
I can see them, but most of the time I just talk to them. Most of the time they stand behind me. So so unless I actually like turn and look at them, but I don't really need to do that. It's like normally they'll just tell me whatever I need to know for different things. So like if I'm working with a client, I'll just, I'll just say, okay, is there anything else I need to know? And I'll hear in my head, no. Like, okay, is there something I need to look at? They're like, okay, look at the Akashic records and then look at the past life stuff, but look at the past life stuff first and then look at the Akashic records because that's more important. I'm like, okay, got it. So that's usually how that works for me.
Wow, I gotta see this chart, JZ.
Yeah.
I love charts of psychics. They're so cool. Do you have any questions on your list of three?
Well, we asked a couple. I'm really just kind of uh blown away or intrigued or something by like your answers to my other questions of like because I think you're right. Like a lot of people seem to say like, oh, they need a process for this or that, and but it I agree with you that it's not necessary to have this long process to jump to a different space or a different quantum reality or whatever, because it's like it's all there. So what is it? It does it take you 5 minutes to get there? Well, if it could take you 5 minutes, can it take you four? Well, if it takes you four, can it take you two? Like, well, why can't you just do it like that? Like, there's absolutely no reason, I think,
Well,
that there has to be
everybody's
complex
different though.
processes.
Yeah, no, it's and I agree with you. It's like everybody's different though. I mean, even just when I was doing when I was involved in like a Reiki share where we were all like doing Reiki on each other, like I would be able to just jump in and get started where other people had to like take a minute and like kind of meditate for a little bit and kind of align themselves and warm up their chakras or whatever they were doing. And I'm just like, okay, everybody's different, and in a traditional shaman, like there's all this stuff you have to do. I mean, like I am a shaman, but I'm not traditional by any stretch of the imagination. So, people and some people they need to have their rituals. Like I am not a ritualistic person, but some people like there's a pattern that they have to follow and it's part of the security and safety of the process for them that gives them that spiritual connection, I guess you could say. And so, for me, like uh, I'm just impatient in general. I'm just like if I can get it done in 5 minutes, like let's just do it. But I also understand
Aries
that some
behavior.
people,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah,
It's so
totally, totally.
Aries.
Yeah, typical Aries behavior. But I mean, but at the same time, like I finally learned that it's like people get a lot of peace from their process. And
Mhm.
so if there is something that needs to happen, like a lot of times I just tell people, okay, you know what? Call me when you're done so that we can get it so we can get going. Like do your thing, but let me know when we're done so that I can just jump in and we can go. But for the most part, I have to respect that because that's just how people are. Some people really love the pomp and circumstance and all that stuff. It's just not my way.
Well, and I feel like, okay, it's to just interject here, it's like kind of a permission. Like I feel like just like with rock and roll, people need like permission to rock. So that's why people smoke a lot of weed and then like play their instrument. It's like, but if you're really grounded in being a rocker, you really don't need that permission of smoking the weed to just, you need a chord progression and an instrument and there you go. Like if you've trained with spirit guides and you're really sound with your Akashic connection and you can see chakras, like I feel like Kai doesn't really need that permission ritual to like drop on into her psychic self. She's like, this is me. I am this. I've been this since I'm a baby. Like, so it's like maybe some people need that permission ritual, but like maybe Kai just is really resolute in her life purpose here. Like, I don't
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that some people too need a lot of theatrics, or like you were saying, or a ritual or something to, like you say, believe it themselves, believe in themselves, because they're trusting the process more than their own intuition, or, who knows? But I think it is true. And I think that there are probably clients who appreciate the ritual too, because, like some people need a doctor who has a very good bedside manner, and some people need a doctor who is straightforward and to the point, So maybe it's something similar.
Yeah. The caveat that I will say though is if someone wants to spend time working with deities, like the different gods and goddesses and things like that, for that there is process because those energies are used to being are they're used to the process, the rituals, the sacrifices, the offerings and all that kind of stuff. And so to work with a deity, like you should follow whatever the pattern is for them. But for most like general energies and working with source, which is what I do, um, I normally don't need that. I do have some connection with the Hawaiian gods, but again, we have a connection. And so I don't necessarily have to do like the rituals and stuff that the Hawaiian gods are used to because they know me and they know that I don't work that way. So
Yeah, I have a weird question that's come up here. Like,
mm,
how much do you think being a sh now it's cool that you have a Hawaiian lineage, so like you're working with Hawaiian god forms and things like that. But then, like, it makes me think of a chaplain. Like, a chaplain is kind of like a white traditionalist version of somebody who deals with like death and rebirth and, rituals and prayer and things like that. Like, do you think shamanism and being a chaplain are the same at all?
I think it's yeah, I think they're kind of variations of the same thing because depending on your belief system, again, that goes, like whatever is your ritual in your head, what fits for you. Like you would either choose a shaman or you would choose a chaplain or you would choose a priest or you would choose a rabbi or whatever it is that fit into whatever your perception, whatever's comfortable, whatever's safe for your belief system, that person could provide that service, whatever that is. Because yeah, like shamans, priests, rabbis, they all pretty much do the same things, just different kinds of variations of, but the general services are the same.
Yeah, like an exorcism feels a lot like a soul retrieval, or not maybe a soul retrieval, but maybe like if you say like somebody has, you had said the deities are attached to them or energies attached to them, and
Mm-hmm.
you can clear that off. That seems like a lot like an exorcism, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is actually.
Interesting.
It's a, well, I don't, I refer to, well, technically it's a deliverance because I'm not ordained, right? It's technically Catholic priests who can do exorcisms. Everything else is considered a deliverance, even though it's technically the same thing. But for me, my personal designation is if the entity is actually inside the person, then that would be considered like an exorcism or a deliverance. If the entity is just attached to the person, um, it for me that's I would just review that as like an extraction, not necessarily, So it's terminology, but that's kind of like how I designate it in my head.
It's like different kinds of soul surgery. Like sometimes you need to pull a tooth, sometimes you need to like take all the teeth and put in a denture. I mean, I don't know, but yeah, like it's really cool because you're like a spiritual mechanic in some ways. I mean, not to make it seem really mechanical, but it's like any problem somebody has with their spirit, you can fix that, it sounds like. You also mentioned ancestral energy. So can we talk a little bit about that? What might people have with ancestral energy?
Well, a lot of times what happens is, say, like somewhere in the family line, because so this happened not that long ago, there is a history in a family of the women always having abusive partners, always. And that the male counterparts in their family were always semi-abusive. And so when I looked at back through the family line of this person that was in front of me, I realized that there were two ancestors that were stuck. They were a couple. The man was majorly abusive, and the woman was used to being abused. And so those energies, because they hadn't, okay, let me back up. Because as a shaman, I kind of see our progression of souls in three sections. So for instance, this section here is where we live, right? We live, we breathe, we have bodies. When we die, we go to the second section. And what happens here is this is where we can kind of say goodbye, finish up last minute business, all that kind of stuff. And then we pass through and we go back to source or God or whatever, pick your label. Okay. What happened with this particular family is they were stuck in the middle. And when ancestors are stuck in the middle, they don't change. Because when we go all the way through back to source, all the human stuff in terms of the things we hate, the things we love, the things we fear, the grudges we hold, prejudices, all that kind of stuff falls away when we go back to source. If we're stuck in the middle, we still have all that stuff. And what happens is all that stuff becomes anchors for the rest of the family, which means it can influence the rest of the family and every single person that's born after them in the family line. And that's what happened with this family. So what I had to do is I had to do the shaman thing. go into that middle section, open doors for them to source, and get them to cross over. And once they cross over, the way I view it is while they're stuck in the middle, they're literally holding energy. They're anchoring the energy. So once they cross over, they drop it. I pick it up and I transmute it so it's actually positive healing energy. And then I bring that forward in the family's timeline to the present day. And in doing so, it releases that energy from the entire family.
Dang. You know who to call when there's a family in trouble. JC, you got another question? I have some if you don't.
Oh yeah, well, no, I'm just so curious about like everything you're saying. Which is great. And yeah. Yeah, but I'm the way that you're talking about things and the terminology that you're using, like you know the difference between an exorcism and a deliverance, and you're talking like using terms like source and God and like in these really intelligent and seeming like really educated ways. So it doesn't seem like you just, oh, I was born with this as a baby and that's it. Like, it seems like you. So tell us a little bit more about the effort and studies that you've put in or how you've educated yourself or experienced things to gain knowledge. You seem to have like a lot of wisdom. How did you gain it?
Good question.
Well, I mean, in my case, like I said, I could see stuff all the time, but real life is real life. So I went to college, I had a job, I did all the things that everybody normally does because I mean, I wasn't going to sit around and be like, "Oh my gosh, look at that thing." Like, I just didn't have time for that. Like, bills have to be paid. So, um, so I spent a lot of time in Hawaii just kind of just living, doing my thing and not paying attention to anything. I can still see stuff all the time, but it just was like, yeah, okay, whatever. I got to go to work. And then when I moved here to Washington State, I, it's like my guides were like, okay, now that you have time to do more of this stuff, we need to get you doing more things. And I was like, okay, I don't know what you're talking about. And they said, okay, you have to take Reiki. And at the time, I didn't even know what that was. I could just kept hearing, you have to take Reiki, you have to take Reiki. And so I get online and I start looking at all the different Reiki sites and it's like hundreds and hundreds of sites that of Reiki teachers and stuff. And I just said, okay, if you really want me to do this, then you need to find me my teacher because I'm not going to be scrolling for 3 days trying to figure this out. And the next site that I landed on was the site who turned out to be my teacher. And so I did Reiki 1 and Reiki 2. And then shortly thereafter, I did Reiki 3. And it was quite funny because she goes, yeah, I posted the thing for a Reiki master and she goes, I don't know why I did it. She goes, and you were the only one that responded. And I say, yeah, okay, so that means it was for me. She goes, yep. And the thing about what kind of taught me things along the way, because most of the stuff that I know is been more experiential, like stuff happens and I just deal with it. And my guides are like, okay, yeah, do this. You can do this. I'm like, I can. They're like, yeah. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go for it. And that has taught me a tremendous amount because I understand what my limitations are because of the fact that I can see a lot of things. Um, I have that immediate feedback loop kind of thing, like, okay, don't do that kind of stuff. And so I think that that's helped me tremendously. One of the things that taught me a lot about energy shields, which is something that I'm really big on, is when I just finished Reiki 2 and I hadn't become a master yet. We did a Reiki share with another class that was doing metaphysical stuff. And there was a guy who was really, really sick and I didn't know. He was on the table, I worked on him, and he smelled like French fries. And I didn't think anything of it because I was like, oh, okay, maybe he just had French fries for lunch. And then I went home and I'm talking on the phone to my friend and I was like, why do I smell French fries again? And after that, like the next morning I woke up, I was sick, could not get out of bed, couldn't figure out what was going on. And I called my teacher and she said, yeah, you got courted by the guy that was on the table because he's really, really sick. And I was like, okay, well, what do I do about that? Because that was the first time I had actually heard about cords. And she said, well, come to my office and I'll take care of it. And she did. And there were other things that happened. And so, in other words, like spending time with my teacher and the classmates that I had, like, I kept learning more stuff about different things. And as time went on, like, I had more abilities. Like, I could do this, I could do that. It was, and it was funny because it wasn't until years later that I realized that I was actually utilizing those skills when I was with those people before I even could put a label on it. So now I'm like, okay, that was that. That's what that was. That's what I was doing there. That's how that works. And so it's been this constant learning process for me the entire time. And, even when I run across people that say things that about how things work in their world, and I'm like, okay, well, that's not really my experience, but you do you. I'm okay with that. And but yeah, everything I do is experiential, and it's really kind of funny because I have a friend who is very she's very studied, right? She's read a lot of theosophy and theology and has like read all the metaphysical stuff. I mean, I can ask her any obscure thing just about and she could tell me about it. Whereas with me, I'm like, I don't know any of that stuff. I just do all that stuff. And so it's really fascinating to have conversations with her because she'll say, oh, I said, oh yeah, I did this thing, blah, blah, blah. And she goes, oh, that's this thing. I'm like, oh, cool. So that's how I approach the world. Like I just jump in and go for it. I mean, I always do things with the understanding that I need to be safe about it because energy is not something that you mess with because it can kill you if you're not careful. But at the same time, because I understand how it works and I understand different frequencies and vibrations and all that kind of stuff, that I get to play in ways that other people can't right now. So I'm fortunate that way.
Yeah, like if you marry an energy vampire, they can literally deplete you to the point where you're sick and you know what I mean? Like I believe that too. Like, in astrology we look at something called composite charts, which is like how people meld alchemically for marriage and things like that. And if like you marry into a bad composite chart, you will get sick. Like when people I don't know, like I believe you that energy can kill you. And so I think that what shamans do is actually, people think it's a luxury item. Like I went to a shaman, as a luxury, and it's like it's not actually not. Like there are times where a shaman is needed to cure people of ailments. You know what I mean? Like whether it be a physical ailment or a sickness or a relationship problem or depression or, it's just like I feel like a shaman is a cure for anything that ails us. Whereas, a lot of people, yeah, I don't know, there's a lot of things that people think are incurable problems. And I feel like, I mean, as a shaman, it seems like you'd be able to handle those things.
Well, the thing is that, okay, so like with cancer, for instance, right? Let's just go right to it. Cancer can be cured, but only if the person who has cancer believes so, like really believes so, because that is one of those things that can affect your energy as well as your body. Um, like death energy is real. Like I can feel the difference. So, for instance, when I send energy to people, what I will do is I will create an energy ball and I will fill it with really good energy and I will send it to the person and I will make that energy ball like refillable from the source. And the intention that I build it with is that the ball will continue to refill with whatever energy frequencies that person needs, and they can do whatever they want with it. So if someone is in the process of like dying or whatever, then if they need help to heal, the energy in the ball will help them heal. If their intention is to cross over, the energy in the ball will change to energy that helps them cross over.
Oh, that's a super
Whoa, I want one of
energy.
these magical energy balls.
Oh wow. I know what to
It's
get
so
you for your
That
birthday. I know what to get you for your birthday now.
sounds awesome. Yeah, send me one.
Wait,
so like
do you take gift certificates for energy balls?
not so far, no. But but energy balls can be used for lots of different things. I mean, like one of the things that I do when I mean, I did this one time as a class. It's like I just wanted people to come and just play with energy. So what I did is I created energy balls with different I made them have different textures, different scents, different colors, and different temperatures. And I just kind of set them around the room. And I was like, just go play with it and see what you can come up with. And just kind of, it's a way of people testing their abilities and not necessarily comparing themselves to other people. Just like, just go play, see what you get. And then at the end of it, I said, okay, I told them what it was. And then I also built an energy ladder, which is I picked an area of the room where I just generated this strip of like earth energy, and then I amped up the frequency to the point where the last step on the ladder was actually like right at the bottom of the angelic realm energy. And yeah, so people were kind of like playing at different energies and frequencies and just seeing like what's comfortable for them. And it was fun. So that's kind of the stuff that you can do with energy, is just play.
Well, fun with shamans. That's so cool. That's like having fun with your doctor. No, I'm just kidding. No, but and I'm thinking like, why is it never an energy square? It's never a cube. It's always a ball. But I
Well,
think
and I will tell you why that is.
why?
It's because when you want energy to continue to flow, if you have a sharp corner, energy can get stuck. You want it to keep going. So
Wow.
that's why you want rounded or curved edges when you deal with energy.
Interesting. Oh my God, this is so cool.
Yeah, and that makes sense too in in the physical world, right? Like surface tension, things form into spherical shapes because that's how they hold together equally in all the dimensions.
Yep.
Interesting. Interesting. Well, so we have 5 minutes left, and there I have a few other questions on here. I don't know if we'll get to them, but I do want to just say to people watching this that I mean I think we should merge this a little bit astrologically and say if you are in a hard transit and you don't know what to do, let's say you are in a hard relationship, it's abusive, you're in a Pluto transit, Pluto square your Venus, and you're in a kind of obsessive kind of thing, this is the time that to call someone like Kai, where Kai can help with the hardest transits ever. If Saturn goes over your moon and you're really depressed for 7 months, and you see my chart's going to be depressed for 7 months, don't wait till the transit's over to go see a shaman. At the beginning of the transit, or as soon as you notice the transit having any ill effects, go get your soul cleared or healed. Because, Kai, they say that the planets play the chakras like a flute. That's what the ancients say. So, if like I've measured heart chakras with pendulums before, and when Saturn comes over the moon, the heart chakra closes down, and like so the planets actually move the chakras around, and so somebody who's normally quite chipper might go through a hard transit and get very depressed for 7 months, or we try to not let that happen because we're the school that does remedies on these things. But I do think you are one of the pivotal and really important healers that people should know of, because I think you're the big guns. Like if anything is wrong, because if you have a transit you don't like, maybe Kai can go into the Akasha and change the blueprint of the chart to maybe tweak that transit or so. There's got to be a way that Kai can help in pretty much any case. And so I just really wanted everyone to be able to meet you, Kai, and see who you are. And so now tell us, though, how can they find you if they do want to work with you?
Well, the best place to check out what I'm doing is at my website, which is handsonfire.buzz. That's BUZZ. I have lots and lots of blog posts about different types of energies and stuff that people might find interesting or, whatever. But um, the thing is, when you're looking at energy problems or energy issues, whether they're pending or you're in them, sometimes people think that their solution can only come in one way. It's not true. So you were just talking about like how the heart chakra shuts down. Like, yeah, there could be like an Akashic record agreement that that was going to happen. Maybe, maybe not. It could just be that you need a little extra shielding over your heart chakra so that that influence can be mitigated. I mean, there's lots of different techniques and things that could be possible depending upon whatever the person's open to, whatever they want to try, whatever, and it also depends upon whether they want to do it themselves or if they want me to do it. I encourage people to like take control of your energy. It's your energy. Like, don't necessarily expect someone else to fix it. This is your journey. This is your spirit. This is your power. Take it. Like, I'm happy to teach you how to do it. But yeah, what I don't want is the dependence, right? Because then that drains their power and makes me responsible for something that I should not be responsible for.
So 2 questions. Do you work remotely and do you train shamans?
I do work remotely, and thus far I do not train shamans.
Okay.
I mean, I do have mentorships. I'm actually mentoring one person right now. I'm very picky about who I mentor just because what I do requires a lot of energy awareness. So if someone is not as sensitive at this point, then it's almost like not worth it to work with me because like I'm going to talk about a lot of things that they're just not going to get.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, that hour went really quickly, honestly. I had 2 other questions which we can't answer, but so it's handsonfire.buzz. Okay. And you'll email me any contact info so I can put it in the notes of this video. Okay. Kai, thank you so much. That was so awesome. Thank you, Jay-Z. I know everyone learned a lot, and we can't wait to see you, Kai, on our transits. We'll be calling you. All
Yeah,
right.
that was
Thanks a
great.
lot.
Yeah,
All right.
thanks.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.